Nothing about that sits well. That is really awful stuff. And that happened in 1969. We're looking at the height of the Vietnam War protests. We're looking at the height of the Berkeley posters. We're really seeing a huge pushback to American involvement in Vietnam. And when you hear stuff like that coming out, yeah, that only reinforces what people were already feeling. So, what we're looking at here is a quote taken from an interview with Paul Medlow done by Mike Wallace, and it's overlaid with a photograph of deceased women and children from Vietnam. Now, I'm going to have you read the entire transcript here. You'll do that on your own in Prezi, but I want to just zoom in where, boop, there it is. So we can see where the quote is taken from. And then that overlaid with the disturbing imagery, it became this phenomena. You see this printed up in magazines. You see it in posters. This interview brought a very big social awareness to what was going on in Vietnam. So let's take a look at a different way of people trying to subvert the military complex. Um, Girls say yes to boys who say no. This is all about trying to recruit people to resist the draft and defect. And what's a good way to get to this demographic? Let's see. We're going with males 18 to 25 getting drafted. They're trying to play to their lust and essentially saying you're going to get laid if you defect. You become more attractive to women by defecting and resisting the draft. Interesting piece of protest propaganda and art that was widely disseminated. It's really kind of interesting, how all of these different groups pop up for the common goal to, each with their own different angle to kind of fight the system in its own ways. Clergy and laymen concerned. Is this what you called phased withdrawal? Talking about, and I mean, we've seen this with the wars in the Middle East that we're involved in, phased withdrawal. That term pops up and it keeps popping up. But what we're seeing here is using that terminology and really driving it home with that, trying to gather that emotional response of the flag draped caskets. And, is this the only way that people are coming home? John Lennon from the Beatles, Yoko Ono, a Fluxus artist at the time, really were advocating for peace. I'm sure you've heard, Imagine, or you've heard Give Peace a Chance. Those are both Lennon and Yoko collaborations. Of course, they were a couple. They had all sorts of different types of protests for for war and advocating for peace. Here is where they um, let's see, they rented out this space and this billboard in New York City. War is over if you want it. Really calling people to act, to change. That with the power of the people comes uh, change. That it doesn't have to be the way that the government dictates. So in all of these different ways, people are trying to get their message out. They're protesting the Vietnam War, or earlier we saw World War I as well. But it continues still. Ralph Steadman, who did a lot of work for Hunter S. Thompson. You probably know him from Fear and Loathing fame. But here we're seeing that tradition continued with Stop the War Coalition, that the wars in Iraq, those are wildly unpopular with a big subsect of both the American and the UK population. This is a UK sponsored group, or not sponsored. It originated in the United Kingdom. Stop the War Coalition. You can see, oh look, we even have websites now. Yay! So this is a poster put out there with clippings um, of all sorts of uh, different media. You see Middle Eastern mosques. You see the helmet and the blood spilled, the splatters, the cigarettes. Everything is scribbled out, and you know, uh, smoking is marked out with war, soldiers, things like that. Uh, and it's a government health warning that, it's kind of drawing in this idea that we do all of these things for public health, but still ship off people to war. That is what Stedman is saying is the public health crisis. The Union mask vomiting missiles over putting this gas mask on the war, only seeing through the lenses of America and the United Kingdom. Memes? Memes? Are memes even art? You will have a response talking about this. Memes? Is that really art? I don't know. But we're going to look at it. So, memes are probably the current equivalent of the protest poster. It's what uh, it's what we use to communicate to masses. People aren't as involved in magazines and things like that. We still see protest posters pop up, but memes are almost instantaneous commentaries. Um, and we'll talk about memes a lot more when we get into propaganda. Um, but it's an interesting way to communicate information almost in real time. That whenever something happens, I mean, you see something come out in a press conference, there are memes about it in real time being posted to social media platforms and being sent, all across the world. So it's an interesting way of communication that has elements of art, but I'm not sure that it is art. We'll let you decide that. Typically, when we're looking at the meme, we're seeing common images used, and there are certain rules that they have to follow. The rules kind of evolve naturally over the course of their existence. And you see the elements of both the cartoons and of the posters. You know, that there is that kind of smug satire from uh, the editorial cartoons that we see, but it's kind of presented in a way that seems more like a Berkeley war protest poster, except that um, it follows that set of rules, that you have the same font, white with black border on the lettering over these images. Some people kind of push them into more creative endeavors, um, and kind of explore the, kind of trying to make a more individualized meme. But the more successful ones are the ones that kind of already exist. That is the kind of the nature of the meme, using the pre-existing criteria to kind of develop a new message and recontextualize something with that same imagery and that same set of rules. And to end this section, this has nothing to do with it. I just thought this was funny.